pilgrim, and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night. Do not detain me, for I am going to where the fountains are ever flowing. I'm a pilgrim, and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night. There the glory is ever shining. Oh, my longing heart is there. Here in this country, so dark and dreary, I long have wandered, forlorn and weary. I'm a pilgrim, and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night. There's the city to which I journey. My Redeemer is its light. There is no sorrow, nor any sighing, nor any tears there, nor any dying. I'm a pilgrim, and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night.
How sweet are the tidings that greet the pilgrim's ear as he wanders in exile from home. Soon, soon will the Savior in glory appear, and soon will the kingdom come. The mossy old graves where the pilgrims sleep shall be opened as wide as before, and the millions that sleep in the mighty deep shall live on this earth once more.
He's coming soon, I know, coming back to this earth again, and the weary pilgrims will to glory go when the Savior comes to reign.
There we'll meet ne'er to part in our happy Eden home. Sweet songs of redemption we'll sing. From the north, from the south, all the ransom shall come and worship our heavenly King.
He's coming soon, I know, coming back to this earth again, and the weary pilgrims will to glory go when the Savior comes to reign. Hallelujah,
joys be known. Join in a song with sweet accord. Join in a song with sweet accord. And that's around the throne. And that's around the throne. We're marching to Zion. Beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God. Let those refuse to sing who never knew a God, but children of the heavenly King, but children of the heavenly King may speak their joys abroad, may speak their joys abroad. Then let our songs abound and every tear be dry. We're marching through Emmanuel's ground. We're marching through Emmanuel's ground to farewells on high, to farewells on high. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God.
Larry, I don't hear you at all. There we go. Now I can hear you.
Okay. Welcome, Jonathan, and welcome all of our viewers. It's a little bit unusual time for us, but Jonathan's been traveling, and so tonight we're doing a little bit different timing here. But I want to welcome Jonathan. Jonathan, you are in Pacific time zone, and I am in Eastern time zone.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but I was on an airplane, so
that's all right. You can't really fix that sometimes. So, but I'm the naughty person, so I'm staying up a little bit late here, but that'll be all right. A little quick disclaimer: these views that are expressed here are my own views, and Jonathan's views are his own views, and probably were similar, but maybe not exactly the same. But these are not the views necessarily of anybody else I know. They're my views, my own views. So anyway, we want to welcome you to our podcast. We want to jump straight into it. We're going to be looking at an article and thinking about it together. It has to do with the United Nations. What else do I want to put in here? Yep, if you have comments, type them in, and we'll see if we can, have any insight answering your questions. But let's just kind of leap straight into it. So again, Jonathan Zirkle, attorney, California. Now he's in Oregon, and so we're glad to have you. And we are looking at, and let's see if I can put it on the screen here. We're looking at this article that just appeared in the Adventist Review just a couple of days ago: Justice, Compassion, and Love from the Amazon to the Margins. and it claims that for Seventh-day Adventists, caring for the planet is an expression of our faith. So we're going to look a little bit at this and think about it together. I should add right here at the front, I am not against ADRA. I've given, some of my giving has been through ADRA over the years. So this is not meant to be an attack on ADRA. ADRA is the Adventist Development and Relief Agency. And I know there's a lot of good things that have happened via ADRA. Nevertheless, we want to be thoughtful about what we do. So this isn't against the church. This isn't against necessarily ADRA. I'm not accusing ADRA. We're not even necessarily against some of the unique ways that ADRA operates. I'm ready and willing to hear and consider how they articulate their approach to why they do certain things certain ways and some of their approaches. But when it comes to this article that's recently been appearing in the Adventist Review, I might have some general disagreements, and so we're going to just sort of look at that together. And Jonathan, we haven't actually talked about this article, but I presume that we're going to work through it, and I think I have it here, so we can put it on the screen, and we have it on the screen. But let me see here. Let me slide down, and I've got it sharing on my screen. And now where is it?
I see it. I see it on the screen. So
yeah.
Oh, but you're trying it's up there. Read it. Yeah. Okay.
But when I find the right tab here, I should always just close more tabs before we do this thing. All right. Get rid of that. Okay, here we go. Here it is. So, yeah, let's just read a few lines and then we'll just leap straight into it. I'm going to read the first paragraph. Now let's see here. Can you see that? I'm trying to go back.
I actually have it on my screen complete. So I'm
there it is. Okay, so it is there.
Yeah.
All right. So so let's try it out here. There it is. While the world gathers in Belém, Brazil for COP30, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, ADRA, calls upon the global church family to join it in prayer, reflection, and action for creation, for justice, and for those most affected by the degeneration of the creation that has been gifted to us humans as stewards. So let's just pause there for a moment. I don't know, Jonathan, are you, I assume you're a little bit familiar with this meeting that's happening right now?
A little bit, yeah. I watched it in the news a little bit. I'm not a super avid follower of this. I don't know how much the press has really covered it, but I actually think I've probably read all the articles that have come across the press that I read.
Yeah, so you might be further ahead than I am, but I read the article, and but it says the world is gathering. And I guess there's over 56,000 delegates. I'm sort of guessing they're not all physically present. Probably some of them are there electronically. But is the world gathering there? Or are these just these delegates?
Well, okay. So who has the right to represent the world is a really interesting question.
Yeah, that's why
we have all kinds of organizations, whether it be the UN, the World Economic Forum, the Bilderbergs, all of these different organizations will probably style themselves as the world if they have a chance,
Yeah, but none of these people are really accountable to the citizens in their own countries in any direct fashion. So therefore, the idea and the notion that we are sustaining or supporting somehow the idea that the United Nations, this meeting they have every year or two, they have these big global, we're worried about climate this and that is one of their big things. But the notion that we're supporting the idea that this is all legitimate representation, where the world is truly represented there. I guess I hate to start with the first phrase in the article, but I don't believe the world is gathering in Brazil for this meeting. These are persons, bureaucrats, And by the way, if you're worried about global warming, I don't know how much jet fuel was spent to get thousands upon thousands of people there, but anyways, those kind of things are interesting. But anyway, ADRA is calling on the global church family to join it in prayer, reflection. So to think about, I guess the whatever's being spoken of there or was spoken. I think this meeting is over, or just about ending. And action. ADRA wants us to, the members, the global membership of our church, to be ready for action, for creation, for justice, and for those most affected by the degeneration of the creation, which God has given us, which is certainly true. God has gifted us the creation. I don't know, any thoughts you have just kind of at the launch of this item here? We're being called to action. So I guess we'll talk more about that as we move through, but
I'll tell you what strikes me, and it's right there in the title, when it says justice. The use of the term justice in this context isn't really, what can I say? This is a modern, when I say modern, I mean very recent way to use this term. When I think of justice and what we see in Scripture primarily is, it's if there's a crime, if someone has done something, you need to seek justice, and you shouldn't cheat someone or something like that. But this is actually, I see this term used this way. This comes from the academy. This comes from the universities. And I haven't done a full research as to where it comes from, but I associate this with kind of the Marxist professors, that are talking about justice, and they use it in an economic term, but they're basing it on Marxist economics. And I think we've seen that kind of filter into the climate arena, and you can see this document is going to be about economics. So right. This kind of justice, it's kind of a collective justice. It's not a scriptural justice at all. And I really think that it's probably a misuse of the term, frankly. And I've got as we go through, I'll make some other comments that would make it, you'll see why I don't think it's about justice at all.
Okay. Well, let's get the second paragraph. ADRA works in more than 120 countries, supporting more than 30 million people each year through emergency relief, health, education, livelihood programs. We see daily, it's kind of an interesting sentence, we see daily how the changing climate deepens hunger, poverty, and displacement, and how courage, faith, and resilience rise even to the hardest circumstances. And of course, for those affected by various things in the world, my heart goes out to them, certainly. But anyway, it looks like this is kind of like an advertisement. We're in this many places. We're feeding this many people. I don't know. I don't know that I have a lot to say about this paragraph, but daily changing climate seems to be aligned with a couple of statements that came out many years ago that our church somehow felt like it needed to produce. Where a certain small number of very, very small number of persons, by no means the global church, spoke sort of, or decided they would speak more or less on behalf of the church and call for the governments of the world to, I don't know, begin fixing the climate, the dastardly climate changes that were happening. So, yeah, we see daily changing climate. Well, yeah, you see daily changing climate no matter where you are, and it's been that way since Adam and Eve sinned, I think. So.
Well, yeah, and I guess if you look at the next paragraph, it says the world is changing fast, and biodiversity loss, environmental degradation, and immense changes in the weather are no longer distant threats. Well, okay, this is adopting a worldview that is actually opposed to the scriptural worldview. When you see a statement like this next one about how it's changing fast and it's no longer a distant threat, what they're talking about, they're being climate alarmists, okay? But what they're basing their alarm on is a long Earth chronology. The science, and I put air quotes on it, the science says that the world's millions of years old and that these changes happen really slowly and everything like that. Now, I'll tell you what I personally believe, and you should maybe think twice about taking full scientific advice from a lawyer. But one of the things I've done is I've gone to a lot of these natural history museums where they show on display the long Earth chronology and all this stuff. And they show how the climate has changed on Earth over thousands, millions of years or something like that. Well, I've come to the conclusion that they're probably correct about the climate change that they represent in the museums. They just have their time scale wrong. And if you take all of the climate change that they represent in those museums, what you're actually looking at, part of it is pre-flood climate. And a lot of it is what's compressed that's happened in the last 5,000 years. And so what I take from that is that climate change is fast. And the second thing I take from that is that it's not caused by humans. And so I think climate change is pretty fast, and it's not caused by humans. And once you realize that it's not caused by humans, and frankly, this is one of those things where if you start to say it's not caused by humans and you're in the scientific community, then you're going to be subject to the cancel culture. And so a lot of what goes on with climate is a scientist can't be perfectly honest, or else he's going to lose his grants. He's going to go through cancel culture and things like that. And so it's not science, it's a religion. Right. Really, it's a belief. And honestly, this belief system is not compatible with what we believe as Seventh-day Adventists about a literal creation 6,000 years ago and a worldwide flood. These things are just absolutely not compatible with modern climate science.
Yeah, I think everything you just said is correct. I do think there's probably some negligible. I think there must be some negligible climate impact by having 7 or 8 billion, whatever 9 billion humans on the planet.
I'm sure there is, but I will say this: when one major volcano goes off in the South Pacific, we see a big climate change. I mean, the weather actually changes in North America. Like, it went off now, and in a couple months, it's going to be different, right?
Right.
I'd be really surprised. I mean, sure, we probably do affect it, but man, 1 or 2 good volcanoes, and it's going to affect it much more than I think even all of us affect. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the pollution half of the equation makes as much as a volcano going off, but even then, I mean, the world's seen much bigger changes than what we're trying, or not trying, but what we're actually doing now, for sure.
Right. I think that my understanding that actual human-caused climate change is probably a negligible, the tiniest percentage. And they extrapolate back millions or hundreds of thousands of years, and they claim that they've got different. Well, thermometers haven't really gone back that far. They're trying to extrapolate from data they think they have. And anyway, it depends kind of on where you start measuring, whether the chart goes up or down. So,
yeah.
But I agree. The world is changing. The biodiversity loss, well, maybe so. But they're no longer distant threats. They're here. So we're basically, this is continuing to push this big, giant climate change story that they have. Now we're all kind of in this, and but there's good people standing together, and so forth. So then it says at COP30, ADRA represents this spirit of faith in action. So that sounds quite heroic. Let's go on to the next paragraph. Communities on the front lines of climate change are not waiting for others to act. They are already adapting, innovating, and caring for creation. But they cannot do it alone. And then we get to this very interesting line right here. We call on, who calls on? I guess ADRA does. We call on, so then they're calling on the church, right? But actually it's
governments.
We call on governments and institutions. To provide direct, accessible, and fair climate finance. So this is you said that would be economic, and here it is.
Yeah.
Resources that reach local actors faith-based organizations, and NGOs working hand in hand with communities. Faith in action means investing where it matters most, where lives are rebuilt and futures are shaped. And again, as I said, I don't doubt that, much good has been done through ADRA and similar agencies. But let's kind of like a different question. Right here, the question in my mind is, how is it that these Christians, that we as Christians are approaching governments and standing with their hands out and saying, please give us money, so we can spend it, on all these good, wonderful things we would plan to spend it on. Standing with your hat in your hand and going to the government and asking for money, I didn't really, the last time through in the New Testament and in the Old Testament, which are 2 testaments, I really don't remember a great deal of this. Do you?
None. Look, this is not really appropriate activity for a church. And I think that this actually goes to some extent is to lay bare a little bit what ADRA is. I like the fact that our church is thinking about doing humanitarian aid. I've got absolutely no problem with that. But I think that the way ADRA executes, going to the government to pay for something for the church to do, it sits wrong with me. And this whole idea about, look, this is really kind of a socialist claim. This whole thing is based on a socialist thing, and we're going to see some more socialist language as we go into this. And what they're doing is they're trying to make kind of a socialist claim, and they're really standing up with the third world to say, we want the money from the first world. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. If this were a real church kind of situation, you wouldn't be calling on governments and institutions. You'd be calling on your members.
Yeah.
And yeah,
this there's a lack. It seemed to me there's a somewhat of there's no transparency. Why would I give? Why do I want to wash my money through the government, and however many layers it takes to get to these guys, different NGOs and whatever, and who's really watching over the NGOs?
Well, yeah, and then what are the governments and the institutions going to have you do with this money? Because once you give it to the government and the institutions, then the government and the institutions control how you actually spend it. ADRA doesn't get to spend it any way they want. They get it with strings attached, and then you end up finding out about how they're helping this flood of immigrants in different places around the world, and they call that climate justice. And it's like, whoa, where'd that come from? But that's exactly what the governments and institutions are saying. They're saying that a lot of the immigration that's going on in the world is climate justice. And so once you give it to the government and the institutions, then they will use it for absolutely anything. And if they need to justify it, they can use climate as the excuse. Climate affects everything. So they'll use that as the excuse for everything they do.
It's notorious also because whereas you have a concrete bad guy like Hitler or Stalin or somebody, that, you can kind of say, well, that country's ruled by these bad people. You can sort of pin that down and kind of work on that if there's something that has to be done. But climate change is kind of
it's like a forever war.
When does it end? It's like the war on drugs. When does it end?
These things will always be changing. I once saw a thing on California weather, and it said that it is in 7-year cycles, and that it takes 70 years to go through a full cycle. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, how old? That's a lifetime, right? And so the cycle of weather in California, if they're even right about that, but you would always be able to point to weather changes, and there's always a drought somewhere. I mean, that's just the nature of Earth.
Right. As soon as you give it through the government, it's like this big giant string comes down and is attached. And even if supposedly it's not attached, are these NGOs and well, for that matter, before we even get to the NGOs, what about governments? Are these governments just out of their goodness of their heart, they're just pure altruistic motivations. Are the governments in one part of the world addressing needs in other parts of the world just because they're very sad for the dire straits that these people are in over here? Or so many times I think there's geopolitical pieces, influences, desires, plans, pushing, squeezing. There's things attached. There's reasons why. And it's like the last guy on the block I would give my money to give to somebody else probably would be the government. I'm not.
That's why when you pay taxes, the reason why you pay taxes is otherwise you'll go to jail.
Well, right. It's because government has the exclusive police power, and you pay or else.
People aren't voluntarily giving the government money, is what I'm trying to say. Nobody does that.
Right. Well, so to call on governments is like a kind of a giant red flag to me. ADRA is calling on the government. We want more NGO money. And how do we know? Well, we're just about the governments. What about the NGOs? How do we know that the money that gets to the NGO, isn't there some administrative fees along the way? Like at every single stage, you're probably going to lose some money because you got to pay all these administrators.
There's been notorious financial scandals with various NGOs. I wish I could say it never affected ADRA. It's just another thing about human nature. It happens. So,
and like when I was pastoring in state of Washington, we had one of the churches I had, we would go down to downtown Spokane, Washington, the second biggest metropolitan area in the state of Washington. And we had this all arrangement. We didn't ask for any government money. We had a little trailer we paid for. Our people we just did it, and we would go down periodically, monthly or every 2 weeks. I forgot what it was, but we would go down. We had it all set up. People all volunteered. They all volunteered their time. We volunteered our means that God had given us, and we went down and we set up and we fed people. We had to always put up a literature tables first. As the people stood in line, they had the opportunity to take a free Bible or any other literature we had there. But whether they took it or not took it, we would just feed them hot food along the way and different things there. And we did that on a regular basis. We never thought of asking the government or somebody else for money. We just did it. And
I think that brings up a great point, because I think that there's this underlying narrative that says, if ADRA doesn't give government money, then we won't do humanitarian work. Is that really true? And if that's really true, what does that say about us? I would much rather see a situation where instead of taking government money, we're actually sacrificially giving it ourselves.
Yeah. I think you have some direct experience with some of this direct action on the ground kind of action in certain parts of the world where there's great tragedies unfolding. And I'm just guessing you didn't go to the government and with your hand out and ask for wads of money.
Well, I wish I could say that. Now, what I will say is I don't want to be a hypocrite here. We actually do get some money from the Italian government, so I'm not going to tell you that we don't do that. Okay. But I will say this is that I don't masquerade as a church, and I think that that's a really big difference. And I don't try to. How can I put this? I don't masquerade as a church, and I also don't get on this big narrative to try to get more money. I mean, my narrative is very simple. People are dying, and people need help. And so anyway, and it's very interesting that you would actually bring that up, because it has made me think twice about the criticism that I do have for some of these kinds of things like ADRA and NGOs and things like that. But I have, as much as I've thought about it, I've always come back to the exact same conclusion, which is, as a church, there's something wrong with the government money that you get that's telling you not to proselytize, because that's the prime directive of the church. And I don't know.
Well, there are sticky pieces here, because you think of all the good you can do if you received this money, and you could perhaps do great good. And if you're directly administrating it yourself, you kind of know where the money's going. You know what what your group is actually doing.
If you directly administered it yourself and it was your own money with no strings attached, I can guarantee you that the work that my organization does in Ukraine would be different. I can also guarantee you that the work that ADRA is doing would be different. Absolutely guarantee you it would be different. And then the question is, okay, how would it be different? And I really believe that if you were in the case of ADRA, you would see a situation where it was more like what we had with our missionaries before World War II. World War II is kind of a dividing line where a lot changed in the way we did the mission work. But with the missionaries, it was very much, you would go to a village, you would set up shop doing a clinic, and then that first Sabbath, you'd start having church. And then you'd have your clinic 6 days a week in church. And that just went on. I mean, the whole thing was all really tied together. Whereas with ADRA, it's not. It can't be.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm open to hearing, the argument for a non-proselyting approach. I've thought about that before. I could think about it again, but there's just been a lot of things we've seen in just the last 2 or 3 years where NGOs, I've come to be quite cautious about NGOs, random non-governmental organizations, and but anyway, I guess we should probably keep moving here. But
sure,
calling on the governments, basically, we're another NGO asking for money. Just give us money. No, let's just keep reading here. But that struck me that gave me kind of a queer feeling. Food and nutrition security is a moral and spiritual concern. Extreme weather and environmental degradation are threatening the right to adequate food, and there's a right to adequate food.
We would never have talked that way a couple decades ago. We would say that climate and environmental degradation are making it difficult to provide for your family, to provide food. And that would, of course, elicit a proper emotional response for us. But then we get into this right language, and I don't think you have a right to food. I think we should be very, very, very careful about how we use language. You have a right to free speech. You have a right to worship, liberty of worship, liberty of conscience. Those are the kinds of things that you have a right. You have a right in America, a right for pursuit of happiness. That means you have the right to go out and grow food. Okay. But that's you doing the farming. And if you go to a desert to farm, you're out of luck. Now, we say, well, but these countries that they're having this climate problem and they didn't choose to live in a desert. Right. Mm-hmm. But what I would point out, and this is where, I don't have a solution to this. This is kind of like saying, what's the solution to peace in the Middle East? Right. But, in the old days, there weren't the kind of borders that we have. And so if you really got into a desert situation, you picked up and moved. And we see that in Scripture. What did Joseph and his brothers do, right? They had a famine. And so Joseph was already there in Egypt, right? But the brothers came all down. They moved the whole family and stayed for 400 years.
Right. If we have a right to, I'm not against him. I'm not for people starving. I want people to be fed, certainly. But if we have a right to food and God creates a desert area and somebody starves to death, then is he not guilty of refusing to feed the people? Anyway, I just think I want to be real, very careful with our language.
It's not a right. And when someone comes to me and asks for something, I look to see whether I feel like that would be a wise use of my resources to help, right?
Right.
But when someone comes up to me and says, "You have to give that to me because it's my right," I can almost guarantee you what I'm going to do. Is not give them anything. It's not the right attitude.
Right. Extreme weather, environmental degradation are threatening the right to adequate food and the livelihoods of millions. ADRA continues to support sustainable agriculture, regenerative land use, and climate-resilient livelihoods that preserve both people and the planet. As followers of Christ, we are called to nurture the earth and ensure that every person has enough to eat. So that's that paragraph. There's more we could say about some of these, and maybe we will, but let's just keep reading.
Sure.
Our work is guided by the conviction that climate action, so this is a conviction. So if it's conviction, that means the Holy Spirit would give us.
Well, let's see if it looks like the Holy Spirit.
Our work is guided by the conviction that climate action is not only about emissions and finance. So there's the economics yet again. Please give us money. It is about people, dignity, and the shared future of our world. For ADRA, this responsibility is grounded in our guiding values, which I guess we're going to hear about next.
But what future of our world are they concerned about?
There's a shared future of our world.
But what's the future of the world that they're concerned about? My concern about the future of the world is preparing people to meet Jesus Christ, who I believe is coming soon. I'm concerned that their future of the world, now I'm not an advocate for destroying nature and destroying the environment, but I'm concerned that their future of the world, they're talking about something that's sustainable indefinitely. But there's nothing indefinite about the world that we're living in today.
Yeah. Let me put a couple comments in here. I don't want to discourage our participants here. Yeah, let me see this bigger. Okay, so thank you for covering this important topic. Here's another one. ADRA belongs to the United Nations. Not very Christian. Somebody's having good climate experience probably there when they say,
yes, I'm jealous.
ADRA quells the mission of the church. Let's get them all here. Is the job of the church to fish for mankind? Interesting. Let's throw a few more here. Evangelism is very good and overserved. The strengthening of the already saved is underserved. I'm sure strengthening those already saved. Oh, maybe it continues here. Can't be quelled by ADRA. So anyway, there's a few quick comments that have come in, and we'll come back to these as we work our way through. But yeah, I appreciate all those comments. And again, as I said at the beginning here or along the way here, I don't think we're against people eating. We're not against people being relieved from any long list of tragedies and things. I think in my mind, a lot of the question is about what's the best way.
Well, yeah, and I think
what is our mission? What's the best way to do the proportion of it that we should be doing?
When you talk about food, remember our history. There was a guy named Mittleiter, and he had something called the Mittleiter method, and I've got his book, and he was famous for going around the world and finding places where there was basically deserts, and he would look at the ground and he would figure out what to do. And within a year or two, he'd leave, and the place was just booming with fruits and vegetables and everything like that. And he wasn't doing it like with a government grant.
He was just doing it because he felt led to do it, and he put his energies in it.
Sure, and it was a standard Seventh-day Adventist mission that we, it was done in the style of our old missions up until, like I said, we continued exclusively till about World War II, and then we started to transition towards what we see in ADRA whenever it started in the 1980s, I guess.
And that's an interesting line, especially with the next 2 or 3 paragraphs here, because of our prophetic outlook, we see Revelation 18 and Revelation 13 and, a lot of insight from Daniel. We see a time coming when the governments of the world, the merchants of the earth, basically all the big giant blobs of influence and power, they're all going to be working together in complete cahoots with Babylon, and they're all going to be blended together to achieve the big story that Babylon has, the big purpose that it has. And so if we sort of already know that there's a prophetic, the Bible's telling us that there's coming a time of imposition, thumbs down, government's going to come and say, you do what we say or else it's no Snickers bar for you. When we kind of already anticipate that from a Bible standpoint, then the idea of dropping money to the government to help feed hungry people in somewhere else. Just because government's just so sweet and good all the time, everywhere. It seems like it's not consistent with our prophetic heritage to be anticipating all these good, rainbows and unicorns that are going to fall out of the sky.
So it's interesting. I think there was the big storm in South Carolina that had the flooding and everything. Who was it that actually went in and really took care of the people? It wasn't the government. Remember, they failed, right?
Right.
The Amish showed up. Why? These are people that don't rely on government handouts for anything, and they know how to get the job done. And just think, if Adventists were not relying on government money, when things are getting bad, like you're describing, if we've been relying on government money, we're just helpless when that happens. But if we've been, and I'm not saying we need to be like the Amish, but maybe in one way we should be like the Amish, and that is not looking for government handouts, being self-sufficient.
Well, and so really, if we're going to the governments, like we already talked about, like we're asking the governments for money. Where do the governments get their money? Are governments money generators? The government doesn't really generate any money.
Well, yeah, there's a saying that the libertarians like to have, is that the government can't give anything that it hasn't stolen from someone else. I mean, I'm not sure that we should go that extreme, but you get the drift. I mean, the money's got to come from somewhere, and it's coming from them involuntarily. That's why there's laws out there to put you in jail if you don't pay your taxes.
Yeah, it's any money that the government has, it has taken from somebody somewhere.
Right.
Or and there's different ways that the government takes the money. One way is extracting it via taxes and fees and whatever. But another way that government takes money directly, robs people in the most indisputable way, is when you have the money supply and there's this much money in it, and there's not enough. The government wants to spend more than it has. Then it, so to speak, prints more money. It creates it creates more money electronically. And so you have more of something. So the value of each unit is obviously becomes less. And so by this process of, inflation, you're basically continuously reducing the value of the money that people already have. So if I had $100 and then the government, printed a big giant wad of money, and then suddenly the value of my $100 becomes, $80. What happened to that portion that's missing? In a sense, that's been removed from me. That value's been taken away, or you could say stolen.
Well, and it's worse than that even, because they also issue government debt, and now your future generations have to pay it back too.
Yeah, your grandkids, you're taking it out of the hide of your grandchildren.
Yeah.
Because now nobody has kids anymore. They just have Dobermans. So.
Or cats.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. Let's keep moving here.
Sure.
But I do think we're talking, and we've noticed it a couple of times already. We are looking at this, and do you think it's going too far to say we're talking about some kind of wealth transfer? Because you mentioned before, we're talking about really first world to third world. We're talking about money. It's probably not that some tiny country in a Micronesia is going to give a big wad of money and it's going to help people in a big giant nation somewhere. More likely, a very large nation, rich nation, is going to have money drawn away and taken in to help some small nation. And again, I'm not against helping other people. I'm not against the voluntary transfer of wealth. But when we're talking about actually the government reaching into someone's pocket and then reaching into somebody else's pocket and putting it there, kind of like a la Robin Hood. I just have trouble. Now, maybe the mask fits, but I don't think the Robin Hood picture really is a good fit for government taking money from person A and giving it to person B.
Well, yeah, and the other thing too, once you get involved in this kind of stuff, there could be someone who is very deserving of the aid, and they really need it. I mean, we really need to help them, right? Yeah, but it could be they're in a country that's disfavored by the UN or disfavored by the sponsoring governments, and so they don't get anything.
Right. Yeah, maybe that country's out of sorts right now, so then we're not going to give them anything. Or maybe there's just corruption over there.
Well, and that's the second thing too that this is used for, to enable corruption, because if you have a country with a corrupt leader, but you want to have a contract for some minerals out of that country, then you get your NGOs, you give grants to the NGOs to try to take care of the people so that they don't have an uprising against their corrupt leader, so that you can get your corrupt contract to get the minerals out of the country. And at the end of the day, the only guy that's rich is the corrupt leader and the people extracting the minerals. And the other people are getting their aid from the NGOs, but they're not getting ahead in life at all.
Right.
They're just getting enough placation so that they don't rise up against their leader. And really, this is honestly the story of the third world. There's a lot of this kind of thing that goes on in the third world.
Well, let's read a little bit further here. We got to whip through this.
Sorry, I talk too much.
No, we're doing fine. So anyway, these are the guiding values. And I don't think we're going to see a lot of prophetic values here. But, I mean, these aren't going to be all bad, right? Justice. Justice calls us to ensure that those least responsible for the climate crisis. Now we're back to the climate crisis.
Well, and who's responsible, too? I mean, they're already saying right here there's an assumption of responsibility by the first world countries when, honestly, we haven't even established that it's caused by humans.
Right. It's not only about it. No, I read that. This crisis do not bear its greatest burdens. We stand with marginalized communities and advocate for fairness in global decisions. Now, let's just pause there for a moment, because global decisions, what global decisions are those?
Who elected them to make a global decision?
I didn't. I guess everybody around the globe knows who the current Pope is, or enough people do. Maybe the Pope will help us with our global decisions, or maybe the U.S. president, or the current dictator in a large Oriental country, or whatever.
Or maybe George Soros' son.
Yeah, I mean, global fairness in global decisions, and I'm absolutely for sure. You and I are for fairness, but this idea that there's some body which I guess we're saying is legitimate to make these global decisions, to me is basically it's basically Revelation. It's like we're saying in Revelation 18, forget about it. Don't worry about it. I mean, it's going to be okay. These guys are all altruistic good guys. Then just let them make our global decisions for us. Everything's going to work out wonderfully in the end. Again,
right.
Unicorns and rainbows. Justice. There's somebody who's being treated unjustly, but don't worry, there's a global body now that's going to fix it for us. I'm sorry, my skeptical side's coming out here. Compassion compels us to listen, to accompany, and to serve, recognizing Christ in those who suffer. Love moves us to act with courage and hope, to heal, restore, and protect creation, our common home. Some of this language, it's not, completely wrong, but some of this language really sounds like Vatican language, our common home.
Well, in law, what we call this happens in trials, and you have to deal with this when your opponent does this. The terminology we use is wrapping yourself in the flag. When you go into court, you wrap yourself in some kind of a concept that no one can argue with, right? I mean, who can argue against justice, compassion, and love? No one. And so you wrap yourself up in this language, and then so then when your opponent does that, you have to actually sit back and go like, okay, everybody, we need a little dose of reality here. This isn't what this is really about. And I would argue that that's exactly what's going on here. It's not really about this, because it's based on a presumption of human climate change. It's based on a presumption of long Earth chronology. It's based on a presumption that the world needs to last billions of years more. It's based on a presumption that Bible prophecy is not true and that Jesus is not coming back soon. There's a lot of presumptions here.
Yeah, there's a lot of presumptions here. And again, I don't think we are against, people might feel like, these guys are just a bunch of hardliners. They're just against helping anybody.
We're in favor of all of these: justice, compassion, and love. But because we have a different understanding of the world, we would express our compassion, justice, and love differently.
Yeah. Let's see here. We got a couple of new comments just to make sure we don't miss anybody. Please help me understand how ADRA can take money from the United Nations and call themselves a Christian organization. And here's another one. Yeah, the United Nations really doesn't look like they're scoring a lot of points with the Christian mindset.
Well, not with people who are awake.
Yeah. Let's look some more at this wording here. Let's put it up there again. Here we go. Now I can't read it on my own line here. Here we go. These values are not abstract ideals. They are the heartbeat of ADRA's mission. They shape how ADRA designs projects, how it responds to crises, how it advocates for a world in which all can thrive. And again, as I said at the beginning, I don't think we're, just somehow anti-ADRA people, but I think that the method and the approach here, we're kind of thinking about some of these things.
Yeah, and honestly, these ideas do not shape what they do. It's the underlying meta-narrative that shapes what they do. So when they get on board with the UN, that's what's shaping how they design their projects. I mean, because justice, love, and compassion is what motivated us in the past, and we did things very differently. What changed? Well, the UN showed up on the stage, and we joined them, and now we do things this way. So to argue that it's love, justice, and compassion that's shaping your ideals, no, it's your meta-narrative that is underlying everything that shapes your projects.
Yeah. There's something that having this pipe that we're putting all of our money through, the UN thing, and there's all these benefits, air quotes, that accrue to us and to other people. And I'm sure there's, like I say, some money maybe gets to the end and somebody gets a cracker at the end, or maybe better. But yeah, I just direct might be good, but let's look. Let's put this up in front of here again and try to read it out. So we have not too much left, and we'll be done here. Okay. As nations move toward cleaner energy and regenerative systems, we urge them. Okay, so ADRA is urging the nations to do so in ways that are inclusive, fair, and human-centered. ADRA calls on global efforts to ensure just transition. What transition is that? One that uplifts workers, protects vulnerable communities, and builds sustainable economies that serve God over profit. This is not only an environmental imperative, it is a Christian one. Your thoughts there, Jonathan, on what's this transformation? Is that
the transition?
Yeah, what's that transition?
Well, it's the transition to green energy. But look, energy is actually what changes the world. And if you look at the difference between the first world and the third world, there's a lack of cheap energy in the third world, and that is impoverishing to them. But when we tell them the only way they can get energy is if they do green energy, we're actually keeping them in poverty. And this is a hot topic in the third world. In the third world, why can't we use coal? Why can't we use natural gas? That's what you did to get ahead. And I think one of the key indicators as to how wealthy a nation is how much energy it uses. If you look at the United States, it uses way more energy than other parts of the world. Now, other parts are really catching up, but they're catching up economically too. And so if you care about your poor brothers and sisters, you should be trying to find them economically viable energy.
And that's going to vary depending on where people are, because
of course.
Look, if you're in the middle of Latvia, where do you get your solar panels? Where do you get your wind turbines or whatever other green?
Well, the reality is it doesn't matter where you are. The only energy that really works, you need the energy when times are rough. When there's a cold winter storm, you need energy. Or when the wind doesn't blow, you need energy. And the only stuff that really works that can make a foundation of your economy has to be stuff that's 24/7. You flip on the switch and it works. That's not green energy.
Right. Let's go a little bit further with this here. But anyway, that transition was interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anybody in the third world or and nobody voted anywhere for a transition. It's just what is everybody's stuck on the same bus, and so
what's interesting is AI is going to revolutionize the need for electricity, and we're going to see nuclear come online.
Yeah, nuclear is definitely coming back.
Yeah,
because they need it for their to run the big local language, the LLMs that the AI.
Exactly.
Yeah, suddenly nuclear is okay.
Exactly. It probably is too. So anyway,
well, maybe it'll be better.
That's another conversation.
That's right. Okay, let's get the last couple paragraphs here. Despite the scale of the crisis singular, there is reason for hope, as UN climate chief so-and-so recently said. If we look past the noise, the facts show a world aligning with the Paris Agreement. Across our network, ADRA offices are already contributing to this transformation, reducing emissions, building resilience, amplifying local leadership. Every tree planted, livelihood restored, every life protected. It's part of the global story of faith and action. The Seventh-day Adventist Church has always upheld stewardship.
Hold on. I know we're in a hurry, but you can't you can't keep going.
Okay.
Despite the scale of the crisis, there's reason for hope. Okay, that's the topic sentence for that paragraph.
Right.
What's their reason for hope? The United Nations.
That's right.
I thought the reason for hope was Jesus.
It's the Imperium. It's Rome. It's the global power.
So my hope is in Jesus, and I kind of know how this is all going to end anyway. If you ask me, this is relying on the arm of men, and even like if you really buy into this hope, to me this is kind of like saying peace and safety. You know, if the UN is going to actually solve all of our problems, the day the UN credibly gets up and says, we're going to solve your problems, that's the day I see them saying peace and safety. And I know sudden destruction is coming, you know? And so it really pains me to see the church saying, yes, there's reason for hope. The United Nations. No, our hope is in Jesus.
Right. Yeah, it's the UN all the way through from top to bottom. This is the UN. And again, not, an analog clock is right twice a day, whether it's running or not.
It's true.
And accidentally, I'm sure the UN has done some good. I'm sorry, that's probably too negative of a thought, but yeah, I did not just fall off the turnip truck. So
right.
Let's see what else we have here. So and so says we look past the noise. Everybody's coming back to the Paris Agreement. Is that really is that a factual statement, or is that sort of a
well, it's
a Paris statement?
I think that's the wishful thinking on their part. They're biding their time until the Trump administration gets out, because the U.S. is not coming back to the Paris Agreement as long as you got Trump in office, and we don't know what's going to happen next, but you may not get a Democrat in there for a while, and the Paris Agreement might be just dead. So this is a very political, partisan kind of statement to make in the United States, to be talking about the Paris Agreement like this.
And that's another piece of this that really, really bothers me, Jonathan. This document, which is at the headline in our, a key story in our church newspaper. This is very political.
Oh yeah,
it really is. The transnational, the UN, and who's responsible, and justice, and then these certain agreements that take from one and give to another so much. This is actually very political, and it's like, don't even go there. Don't even begin to go there. But inevitably, with all these dollars involved, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars annually, potentially here.
Well, hundreds of millions for ADRA potentially, but billions around the world.
Right. No, I'm talking ADRA, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of dollars at stake, and yeah, this maybe people won't like this. Our little talk.
And the other thing too is that I can almost guarantee you that this article will be shared with the United Nations by ADRA as a way of saying to the United Nations, see, we're on board, Give us some grants. I mean, maybe I'm too conspiratorial. Maybe that won't be the case. But I have a feeling the United Nations is watching to see if the people that receive the grants from them are supporting them. And this is a great way to show your support, is to write an article like this for the Adventist Review.
Yeah, and it gets circulated across the whole church, more or less. And yeah, we call on the governments to do this. Give us this money.
Yeah.
We're doing this.
Exactly.
Well, let's get our last paragraph here, and
sure.
We'll finally give everybody a rest here. But here we go. The Seventh-day Adventist Church has always upheld stewardship. Actually, I mean, yeah, we're for stewardship, but in terms of the planet, well, let me read it. Stewardship, compassion, and justice as expressions of our faith, as COP30 unfolds in the heart of the Amazon, a place where creation still sings its most powerful hymn. Let us renew our commitment to care for the earth and for one another. Our commitment to care for the earth and one another. May our prayers inspire action. May our faith move mountains. May our love heal creation. So there it is. And again, not trying to just pile on and beat up, but I wonder how many of our people, how many of them would like to give to something like ADRA or a different version of ADRA, where they knew that, there's no gap matching government money, there's no money coming in from Intel or somebody, but if I give, this much money to this, whatever, new ADRA, neo ADRA agency, they're going to take it and they're going to use it in a very direct way to help people, with this crisis or that crisis. It's not, we don't have to wash it through the government. We're not out here making claims about it, or being kind of on this global team, like there's justice coming because we're in tune with all these very powers, which we already know are coming in Revelation 18, coming together. I wonder how many of our people would be glad to give. Maybe they're satisfied with this. Some, I guess, must be. But how many of us would feel more comfortable with a more transparent, a more simple? I don't want government money. I don't want, and maybe I can't do as much good. But you know what? I'm out of the geopolitics. Then you have really, do people in some random place that's being helped, do they really, and they're being helped with, giant wads of money, do they really think that this is all coming from Christian people to help them, or do they not know, as perhaps, that this is tied in with some government thing somewhere, and that this isn't necessarily just all coming because people on the other side of the world just feel overwhelmed with sympathy for them, and so they're just doing it for out of the goodness of their heart? Or do they realize that it's because we have all these minerals, or we have these resources, or there's this thing between these nations? I kind of would like to have an option that is indisputably transparent, that is, it doesn't have 18 steps between one thing and another. And maybe people will say, you're not being fair to ADRA, and maybe I'm not, but I'm kind of thinking out loud as we go.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I think that, maybe I'm looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, but like I said, I collect missionary stories, and at least as far as the Adventist Church goes, the golden age of missionaries, it seemed to be from about maybe 20 through 1950. It's actually a fairly small period, but even if you go back before that, all the way back to the founding of the church, you see very similar things. It's just that it really took off, I think, in the first half of the 20th century sometime. It was very different formula than what ADRA was. And what it is, it's a very tight union between the humanitarian and the evangelistic. And so you are doing the humanitarian concurrently with the evangelistic, and it's also very one-on-one. So it's about a missionary family that goes out into the field and does something. It's not about a team of 200 people go out and solve some country's problem. It's small, it's personal, and it's very inspiring. And the sad thing is that you look at these books, we don't produce them anymore. And I think the reason why we don't produce these books anymore, we do a little bit, but not much, is I don't think there's those stories. You don't get those stories of the Holy Spirit as much. And that's very sad. And I think we need a revival. I think we need to have people wake up. And I really believe in going back to some of these older models. And if you also want to look not just at Adventists, but just look at Protestantism in general, like during the Bible societies and the missionary societies out of England, especially, it took the gospel around the world. And believe me, it was everything they did was very tightly intentional. They were definitely helping people, and they were getting the mission done. And now we've divorced everything from one thing or another. I can almost guarantee you, if ADRA was out there and it would go into a country and convert everybody to Seventh-day Adventists while it was doing its work, they wouldn't be getting any more grants from the United Nations.
Right. Yeah, I suppose that almost certainly would be the case. And again, I don't think that my goal or your goal is to be like somehow just spoil sports and we're down on ADRA. We had this big thing that came out in the last year or so, big expose, big revelations about NGOs. It might be just not even the last year, but the last couple of years. The dramatic ways that non-governmental organizations, not all of them, but many of them have been used for geopolitical ends with immigration and so on, and climate things. In that space, with that happening in the news, what did our church do? And it's always easy to, be in the back, quarterback, you're in the back seat, telling people how to drive. But they basically came out with a statement that basically everything's fine. Don't worry about it. We need more money for this, and don't worry, there's nothing wrong. But we're living in a time when, because of the internet, transparency really becomes it becomes a necessity. More transparency. How much money did we get? Where was it taken from? How much was spent administratively? How much got to the other end of the pipe? Was this connected with anything geopolitical? And so all these wads of millions upon millions of dollars package that have been received by one NGO and another NGO and our own NGOs. It seemed to me that we're in a time when it's not good enough to just say, hey, everybody, it's okay. Our NGOs are pure. Send us money. I think we're in a time when we really need more transparency. We need to know, and why again are we washing our money through a government agency or a non-governmental agency? Why do we need the government when we could directly route the resources God gives us and directly put it to play? And then also we're not caught with the you can't proselytize piece. So we can be more direct in giving the gospel. So I'm not trying to be, a dark mooded person about this, but maybe this was good in 1955 or 65.
Well, I think in 85, I think is when we really got it rolling. And maybe it was good. How can I put it? When you start a project, you don't know where it's going. You just don't.
True.
And so maybe it's time to actually sit back and reevaluate. How did it work out?
Yeah.
And it seems like we can't have those conversations very easily. But I'm glad we're having it here on this podcast. One of the things that I've been really struck is I've been looking into this whole UN thing, and I've been starting to pay more attention. And one of the things that strikes me is that the UN is really functioning as a government. It's kind of a global government, right?
Yeah.
So if the UN is really functioning as a government, whether it's legitimate or not, that's what it's doing. Well, what do we know about state-supported churches? The more, if a church needs, I love Benjamin Franklin said that a church that requires state support is a sign of the weakness of the church, and that if God cares about his church, he's perfectly capable of taking care of it. And if God doesn't care about his church, he doesn't need the government to take care of it. Right. And I think Ben Franklin nailed it right there. Right. And you can get the same concept out of some of the other founding fathers of America, where they're saying, the sign of a weakness of a church is the need for government support. And then they also went much further, where they said, if you actually give it government support, it actually weakens the church. And what I see it doing is it transforms the church from being a church into being some kind of a political agency.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to take the principles of separation of church and state and actually apply it to the UN. And I really think that we need to stay away from too much government funding. And there's another way of looking at this. Let's be honest. I don't really like this terminology, but it does help us look at it. Religions are kind of in competition with one of each other, right? In a sense.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, how does it make you feel if your competitor is being funded by the government? Doesn't make you feel good, does it?
Right. It's like it's not the level playing field anymore.
Well, and how should it make them feel if you're getting funded by the government?
It's not a level playing field.
That's not good either.
Yeah.
Right. And so in the United States, we came up with very strict rules about, separation of church and state and separating these things out. And somehow it seems like everybody's forgotten about this. And sadly, in the United States, it's somewhat being forgotten with the faith-based initiatives out of the White House, right? But these aren't good things. And then here we get to the UN, and I mean, they call directly, we need government funding for faith-based NGOs. It's like, are you kidding me? What have we forgotten? I mean, we've forgotten so much. There needs to be really good conversations about this, really open conversations to be absolutely certain this is what we want to do. And I do think I love the work that Tim Rumsey has done, where he's shown that what the UN was interested in was actually what we put in our church statements. We need to see who leads who. And I don't want to have a church that's led by the UN.
Right. I mean, that would be, it kind of is like you said at the beginning, that's kind of this humanistic religion, this climate religion and all that. Really, it's like we're a subsidiary of that church sometimes, rather than our own thing. Maybe I should close with this idea. I know of a church, I won't name it, but good church. They rented out their church to Sabbath meeting church. They meet on Sabbath. They were renting out their facilities to Sunday keeping church. Well, that church came to a place where it no longer needed to rent their facilities. They also, by the way, this Adventist church is supporting a substantial Seventh-day Adventist educational institution, which is a good institution. Well, guess what? When the other entity began to not need to rent anymore and the rent money went away, it became very difficult for this church to sustain our own sister institution, because they basically, without meaning to, surely they didn't mean to, but they have become unduly reliant on this external money, which came from somewhere. Well, in this case, it came from rental. But the point there being, do we want our humanitarian work to really be so dependent on this NGO money or this funny money that comes, and who knows how much of it is, where it all comes from, and how legitimate it is to begin with.
But I think you went into a trap right there when you said, do you want our humanitarian work? I don't want to do any humanitarian work. I want to do mission work. Mission work includes the humanitarian. Absolutely. Okay. And this idea of we do humanitarian work, this is a way of saying we do work without the mission.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we haven't solved the problem today, but
No.
I think we're in and probably this will be understood by many people as a very dark and negative approach. I think I just want to have more clarity about what
So,
goes from one thing to another and another. And do we want to have this potential dependency? And are we really, are we the head or are we the tail? Are we going to, when the world thing is about climate or it's about this or it's about that, do we want to just have to come along and tell everybody as we go by, yeah, what these guys said? Or do we have our own distinct mission, which really is not stewardship of the earth in this sense? I mean, I'm not against being good to the earth. I'm just saying.
So what I think is I would like to have a church. I think we need to spread a little bit of a positive vision right now.
All right, let's
I'd like
finish
to
with
have a church that fields missionaries, that does humanitarian in the sense that but I want it to be mission, right? So having a church that maybe puts a school in a location, that teaches agriculture, that provides some kind of industry, some kind of teaching, improve the economy, all of this stuff, but have a school there or whatever you do with a church right there. So at the very moment you're building the economy, you're building the church. And the other thing that would be very interesting, I think, I know that the politics are complex in the third world, but I have a feeling that the governments and the people would take notice if they knew you were there and you weren't taking UN money, because they would realize that you can function independently of any agendas that they may be forced down their throat from the UN.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, because it sort of taints the bucket, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we know you guys got, all these millions of dollars from the government, so.
Well, it's like the UN will go, my understanding is that they will go to a third world country and tell them, we're going to give you all this humanitarian aid, we're going to give you food aid and all this other kind of stuff, but you can't build electrical infrastructure that's going to cause CO2. And we're all like, now imagine if we went there and said, we're going to build all this stuff, and if you need to build something that improves your life by electricity, so that now you can cook using electricity instead of having to use a fire inside the house that makes you breathe in the smoke and die young from the smoke. I really think this is going on in the third world. At least it was recently. And I think that we would do so much better if we could just not be known as being a part of these strings that are being attached. And then I also think if they just knew for a fact that the people that were helping them were sacrificially giving out of their own pockets, that's inspiring.
Right. I know there's good stories out there, and we haven't really talked about a good story today, broadly speaking, but there's many good stories out there. There's many Christians, and there's many things that our own denomination, many good things that are being done out of good, solid motives and a love for Jesus and a love for people. But,
amen.
But this article, it just seemed to come from the beginning, from the first word all the way through. It was legitimizing this group of nations, which I don't see as having particular legitimacy. Instead, I see the Bible showing us that at the end, we're going to get crunched by this group. It's not going to be a happy deal. God's going to win in the end. Jesus is coming. But I think we need to remember our prophetic heritage. And if we remember our prophetic heritage, we will be more apt to seek God's leading and directly do what God leads us to do, and also to be giving his message without restraint. If you're driving and you got one foot on the gas and you got another foot on the brake, because that's kind of what it is when you can do these things, but you can't tell your main business. That's not good for a car, and I don't think it's good for a church.
Yeah, and I also want to say this too. I've had the opportunity to travel, and I met people in ADRA and stuff like that doing stuff. And I just want to say that I do appreciate people that sacrifice to go overseas to help. And I just want to say that this is really a conversation about the big picture and about how I feel that it should be managed and what I believe the Holy Spirit wants us to do. But I don't think we should, I don't want this to be taken as a criticism of individual people that are in the field.
Right, absolutely.
The people in the field know why they're there.
Sacrificially, many of them.
Many of them. And they're there for many of them, most of them, hopefully, all of them are there for all the right reasons. And so this is really, in my view, this is a conversation about how we can do better and how we might want to strategically change. And it's not a criticism of the individuals in the field. I want to make that just 100% clear. I suppose there's a few people listening that maybe aren't doing what they should be doing in the field, in which case I think it's good that they hear this. But for those good, and I know there's a lot of them, perhaps most of them, perhaps the vast majority, perhaps all of them, I don't think it will be all, are there for all the right reasons. And I want to say thank you even to those people.
Amen. Definitely. I guess what I want another option. And I think there are other options, but
absolutely.
I think the world is changing, and there's a lot that's been exposed that leads us to say, step back definitely a ways from all the NGOs and government money. And I want to see, I think that many good things can be done in a more direct fashion where we don't wash money through the government.
Yeah. And real quick too, I think also in 1985, the UN was a very different organization. I think in 1985, the UN actually was functioning as an important buffer to keep the Soviet Union and the United States from going to war. And I think that was commendable. The way the Security Council worked then during the Cold War, I think was very important. And that's when we joined, was during that Cold War era.
Right.
But it's changed. And I'm not going to say it was great back then in 85. I mean, you had the John Birch Society revealing a lot about us. There's a lot of warnings even then. But I can understand how somebody might have a different view of what was going on with the UN. I think now, as we see that the main agendas are different, and I think there's been a lot of veils that have been removed, and I think that it's a different world. It's a different. I hold people to a different level of responsibility as far as their views of the UN at this point.
And there it is, right there, Jonathan. There it is. The world has changed, and we know more now, and things aren't being done in the same way they were perhaps then. And I've just recently, just in this past weekend, I heard some really well-informed information that was given in some presentations that really pointed to even a longer interaction with the League of Nations and the development of the UN and ADRA kind of thing. But that's not our full topic here tonight. But anyway, hey, thank you for joining me. I want to thank all of our people that tuned in. I didn't know if anybody would tune in because of the hour, but we've had consistently definitely some viewers.
Well, praise God. I'm sorry to keep you up.
Well, I'm going to go to bed now. So in the sound you'll hear in 11 seconds will be my tie coming off.
There you go.
Anyway, good night, everybody, and we'll see you around. God bless.